My process in making or directing this highly collaborative and ambitious piece, which we call Fela, was to turn to my friend, dramaturg, Jim Lewis, and try to instill or infect him with my own enthusiasms and questions. We read through many different texts. Michael Veal, a musicologist, writes in a very persuasive way about development of Fela's music and its place in Nigerian/Yoruba culture, its relationship to the American liberation struggles of the 1960s. We then set about writing a treatment that tried to divide this immense terrain into a number of scenes. One scene was going to be called The Showman. In The Showman, we would see what made Fela such a mesmerizing presence on stage as he talks us through his various influences and how he arrived at what we understand to be Afrobeat. Another scene would talk about Fela as the Black president, a man who had constantly stood up to one of the most murderous and corrupt regimes on the face of the planet, asking for an accountability, asking for transparency, and a man who actually tried to run for president in this very, very treacherous environment and who paid a great cost as a result of it. We've tried to understand Fela's sexuality, his relationship to the women in his lives, like Sandra Isidore, his mother, his many queens, he called them, 27 to be precise. How Fela understood what it meant to be a good African husband, what it meant to actually understand the relationship of his politics, his music, his sexuality to the world of the gods, the Yoruba gods. How in fact he actually turned to the Yoruba gods at a time when all things in the world seemed to have been crashing down around his ears, and was able to still continue to make music at a very, very high level. Our studio every day is an experiment. Aaron Johnson, Jim Lewis, now Marina Dragidich. We are constantly looking for ways to make the world of Fela palpable and believable to a contemporary audience. It has to do with how much of Fela's legendary shrine can be transposed to the musical theater world. His shrine was one part nightclub, one part bully pulpit, and one part shrine, religious place of religious transformation. How much of that can really be communicated on our stage? These are the questions that lead us to try all sorts of things. The way in which the space will be divided, the audience, how the audience is pulled into the performing area, how there is a demarcation between the musicians and Fela's performing area, how the women in the cast sometimes play different roles, how men come in and out of the band to represent soldiers or represent dancers. How Fela is able to at once be the megalomaniacal genius performer that he was, and at other moments to lend us sober confidence, to say something about his insecurity, his fear, and his vulnerability. There is a ferment of questions that have to be asked. Peter Negrini, the brilliant video artist working with us, has been given the task of making cinematic essays that talk about the Nigeria of Fela's past, the post-colonial euphoria that was undercut by the greed of successive Nigerian military regimes. The question is, can Peter Negrini sometimes actually show us the inside of Fela's head and heart in a way that neither words or even the staging would be able to or would not be able to do with such eloquence? The idea is that the audience walks into a complete environment an environment that is state of the art in terms of the lighting designed by the very gifted Robert Wurzel, the video by Peter Negrini, the decor by Marina Dorgic, but at the same time transport us to at once Nigeria in the 1970s and 80s, but to the realm of the Yoruba gods in a section that we call Fela and the Gods. All of this is the result of questions that are asked and solutions that are pursued and discarded, and a good dose of good faith.